Welcome to A2Council Update, a recap of the Ann Arbor City Council meeting on August 7th, 2023. This meeting included comments and discussion of challenges faced by renters in Ann Arbor, new rules for who can serve on the city's Transportation Commission, a rezoning at Henry and State that will allow more short-term rentals, amendments to the Transit Corridor Zoning District, and a new ordinance requiring home energy audits. This is the voting chart for the council meeting on August 7th, 2023. There was one non-unanimous vote on the amendment to Transit Corridor zoning. All other agenda items were approved or postponed unanimously. Councilmember Jen Cornell and Mayor Taylor were absent. You can find this voting chart and more information about this meeting at a2council.com. Like and subscribe if you would like to see more content like this. The meeting included a monthly report from Stephanie Carter, chair of the Independent Community Police Oversight Commission, or ICPOC. She commented on new body cameras for the police department that utilize AI technology.
So we're looking forward to getting with Interim Chief Metzger and seeing how this new AI, I think as I understand it, it's called Trulio, and we're interested in how that's going to affect our oversight function.
She also announced a meeting scheduled for Wednesday, September 27th at Peace Neighborhood Center.
We are inviting the public. They will be sending out emails to various community organizations, and we certainly invite council and the public to come.
After introductory remarks, public comments, and staff explanations, council discussed agenda items for about 45 minutes. 24 people signed up in advance to offer public comment. 7 people spoke to issues on the agenda. 13 people signed up to speak on housing rental issues in Ann Arbor.
We need people on our side at the state level and the city level who are willing to flat out side with tenants against the big landlords. This is not like a win-win situation. We need aggressive, broad policies like limiting rent increases. We need public housing that's not for profit and that's mixed income, because then you can get over, some of the, the negative, stereotypes of public housing. The landlords are going to fight any effective policy, and we need you to stand with us.
The consent agenda included 21 items and $7.4 million in expenditures. One item was pulled for discussion, an $80,000 contract with Spark for economic development services. On the morning of the meeting, Councilmember Harrison submitted 20 questions to the city administrator, which were read aloud.
And the final question: has Spark taken any measures to ensure its leadership, including the board of directors, reflects the diversity of the communities it serves? So those are the questions for the record. Staff needs time to respond.
Council voted unanimously to postpone consideration of the contract to the next meeting. Council then considered final approval for changes to the Transportation Commission bylaws, removing the requirement that one commissioner be an owner or operator of a transportation business in the city. These changes are an ordinance amendment subject to a public hearing. It was previously considered on July 17th and approved unanimously at first reading. Council discussed the issue for about 5 minutes.
This was made last fall at the recommendation of Transportation Commission when I was serving on as liaison. Councilmember Ackman is the liaison now.
I've discerned a gap in the ordinance which establishes the Transportation Commission. While it maintains the participation of 7 public members, there is a potential oversight. There's no designated seat for someone 55 years or older. I propose that we revise the bylaws to reserve at least 1 seat for a community member who is 55 years or older. This step will ensure the incorporation of the unique perspective and requirements of our senior community in our transportation policies and services. This is where I move to, okay, so with these considerations, I move to postpone the discussion to September 18th.
One piece that I might ask the Transportation Commission to consider as we're doing that is I know that we have been often overrepresented by older voices in terms of the public comment we've received and sometimes on commissions, and so something just to consider in terms of having designated seats.
According to public records, at least 2 current members of the Transportation Commission are over the age of 55. Any changes made at this point will require consideration at 2 more council meetings, another approval at first reading, another public hearing, and another vote for final approval at second reading. Council voted unanimously to postpone the ordinance amendment to the Transportation Commission bylaws to September 18th. Council then considered approval of a rezoning for the block bounded by Henry Street, State Street, Stimson Street, and White Street. This block is 1.7 acres and currently contains 49 housing units on 10 parcels. Only one parcel contains a single-family home. The developer of SouthTown has requested a change in zoning from multifamily residential to campus business residential. According to city staff, the rezoning would triple the development on this block. It would also allow up to 64 housing units to be used as full-time dedicated short-term rentals, or Airbnb. Under the current zoning, full-time dedicated short-term rentals are not permitted on this block. Earlier in the meeting, public commenters spoke to the issue.
C1AR zoning seems entirely appropriate for this area. It's right across the street from the athletic campus, near a bunch of other student housing and stuff.
It is the kind of conditional zoning that the courts have very clearly ruled against. And it would create significant possible repercussions to property owners and tenants for many blocks nearby, an area commonly known as Lower Burns Park. So whether you're an owner-occupant or a tenant, we risk losing long-term housing stock in favor of short-term rentals.
According to city staff, the C1AR zoning district places high-density residential and commercial development near the campus business district. Council discussed the issue for about 4 minutes.
I would like to make it clear that the city's approval of SouthTown would not obligate us to approve future applications for C1AR zoning in that area, and it would not open the door for a flood of STRs in that area. Zoning is considered on a site-by-site basis.
Zoning is not actually considered on a site-by-site basis. Spot zoning is not legal because planning and zoning decisions are meant to comply with a comprehensive land use plan. The hallmarks of illegal spot zoning are a small area compared to surrounding districts, a lack of consistency with what's allowed in the vicinity, special benefit to an individual property owner, and conflict with the comprehensive land use plan. The campus business district nearest to the proposed SouthTown development is at State and Arch, with the whole residential neighborhood of Lower Burns Park in between. The developer of SouthTown offered 4 conditions to the new zoning. The building will be no taller than 100 feet, there will be only 54 parking spaces available for the 216 units, and natural gas connections will be limited to emergency backup. Councilmember Dish explained a 4th condition.
The principal use of the property shall be multiple family residential, and no more than 30% of the dwelling units may be short-term rentals.
The possibility of short-term rentals was a concern when the Planning Commission considered this rezoning in May.
There is one thing that is really hanging me up, and that is Airbnb. Because this developer came to us several years ago and said she was doing a development for young professionals. And she has several properties around town, and they are all listed as short-term rentals. All of them. I feel a little salty about what she came up and promised us. That was legal then, but I feel like she kind of misled us, because right now I have a hard time seeing how this could not just turn into Airbnb land, and that is exactly the opposite of what we want. Because if this becomes all Airbnb, in my mind, it's better if you leave those existing houses, which are at least affordable.
The chair of the Planning Commission referred to a development on Henry Street, owned by the same developer, Heidi Posier, who is also co-owner of 4M. Heidi Posier needed approval for a 66-bedroom development on Henry Street, and she presented it as housing to meet the needs of young urban professionals. The project was approved by both the Planning Commission and City Council. Within hours of receiving final approval, Heidi admitted that the project was actually a large-scale development of short-term rentals, or Airbnb. Her company also developed another 6-bedroom Airbnb project on White Street. When rezoning for SouthTown was discussed at the Planning Commission, Commissioner Lisa Sove was recused due to her professional involvement with the project. Heidi Posier, who also uses the name Heidi Mitchell, donated to the political campaigns of Mayor Taylor, Councilmember Iyer, and Councilmember Ackman. In December 2022, Mayor Taylor announced the nomination of Heidi Posier to the Renters Commission. It was later withdrawn. This week, council members offered enthusiastic support for SouthTown.
I just want to say, as a 4th Ward council member, I'm really excited to see this go forward, and looking forward to voting for it tonight.
Council unanimously approved the rezoning for SouthTown at first reading. At a future meeting, this rezoning will be the subject of a public hearing and voted on again for final approval at second reading. Council then considered amendments to the Transit Corridor Zoning District that would restrict auto-related businesses. City staff recommended allowing these businesses as a primary use because it would have minimal long-term impacts. Mayoral appointees on the Planning Commission rejected that suggestion and recommended to Council that auto repair and auto rental be treated as special exception uses. Planning Commissioner Wanwoo Lee was recused from the decision due to his conflict of interest as an employee of Oxford Properties. Oxford Properties has significant holdings in the TC1 district. Applications for special exception uses are approved by the mayoral appointees on the Planning Commission. Earlier in the meeting, public commenters spoke to the issue.
Having any kind of improvement to the ability for businesses in the city to sell and rent cars is at odds with our stated goals.
With the help of staff explanation, Council discussed the issue for about 15 minutes.
This change gives existing auto-related uses conforming status, which opens the possibility that they can apply for updates that are better aligned with TC1 forms than their current form is.
Council unanimously approved an amendment that would remove the requirement that auto-related businesses provide indoor storage for all vehicles. The main motion to amend the ordinance was approved at first reading, with Ward 4 council members Iyer and Ackmon in opposition.
I do know firsthand that car rental can serve as an important element in the car-free or car-light household, but I don't really see the need to open the gates to additional car dealerships in these zones, even by special exception use.
At a future meeting, the ordinance amendment will be subject to a public hearing and voted on for final approval at second reading. Council then considered a new ordinance that will require the disclosure of home energy audits to a home buyer as part of the process of selling a home. The ordinance does not apply to multi-story, multifamily housing, accessory dwelling units, mobile homes, or commercial buildings. Earlier in the evening, public commenters spoke to the issue.
I'm the CEO for the Ann Arbor Area Board of Realtors. We represent 1,100 real estate professionals in the Ann Arbor area. On behalf of our membership, I'm here today to speak in opposition to the Home Energy Rating Disclosure Ordinance. Staff is clearly aware that one assessor will not be able to meet the demands in a timely fashion, potentially stalling home sales and/or adding additional cost to the transaction. Rather than an estimate, please remember that buyers can contact DTE and obtain an actual cost for recent years.
After city staff introduction, Council discussed the issue for about 14 minutes.
So by requiring home sellers to disclose the energy efficiency of their homes, it can protect home buyers from purchasing a home that they would otherwise be beyond their means to heat and cool. In the drafting and reviewing process of this ordinance, OSI staff met with the Ann Arbor Area Board of Realtors, Reinhardt Realtors, I'm going to Howard Hanna tomorrow, as well as a number of individual realtors. Missy mentioned our goal to get all homes in Ann Arbor scored with a home energy score. And by doing that, we get the home energy scores done prior to the sale process, and it removes it from the real estate process altogether.
You've been very intentional about pulling people into conversations and making changes and adjustments as we've learned more.
The new ordinance requiring home energy audits, but not for multifamily housing, accessory dwelling units, mobile homes, or commercial buildings, was approved unanimously at first reading. At a future meeting, it will be the subject of a public hearing and final approval at second reading. Finally, Council considered a resolution that asks the city administrator to analyze the impact of storm-related power outages in terms of geographic patterns, communication, city systems, and the role of resilience hubs. The city administrator will submit a report, including an inventory of heating and cooling centers, emergency costs to the city, and a plan for improvement by September 30th, 2023. Council discussed the resolution for about 8 minutes.
So these are it would be interesting to see how we can plan for our next budget and budget for more timely response. I mean, I appreciate the response the city has made so far. We would have probably had worse damage if we hadn't pruned and were proactive about tree maintenance earlier in with the February storms. Was it February? Yes, it was February.
The resolution was approved unanimously. Council went into closed session for over an hour to discuss pending litigation in the Platt Convenience versus City of Ann Arbor case in the Michigan Court of Appeals. After the closed session, the meeting adjourned before 11 p.m. with 2 additional pre-registered public commenters speaking to rental housing issues in Ann Arbor.
I want to make sure that everyone here and watching later even perhaps understands that this is not sustainable. The price increases year over year are far outstripping inflation. And it's making it harder and harder to make a life here in Ann Arbor.
For more details about this meeting, visit A2Council.com.
Welcome to this week's A2Council Moment of Zen.
The inclusion of the requirement that the storage and repair of automobiles, trucks, and construction equipment must be located in an enclosed building. This would be the only situation that would require, I could just want to strike the storage component. Let me go back. I'm sorry. I need to go back and strike my proposed amendments. Sorry. Need to think this out more, what I'm actually proposing.